Okay, thank you. Engineers report.
Good evening. The first item is for Harris Blacktopping. They've requested the release of the 5% retainage, and I wrote a letter on October 4th recommending the release of the retainage, the 5% remaining for the project.
Okay, can we have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Seconded. And this is for last year's Frost Lane project, correct? Where they had to come back and do some repair, and you're satisfied with the repair?
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, any further discussion? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The next item, Newtown Artesian Water Company, the State Street and Washington Avenue curb ramp construction. The design engineer reported they're still revising and working on the redesign for the ramps. I had emailed them, I guess late last month, that I was concerned about the grades being too flat along the curb ramp and too steep at the side slopes, and so they're working on a redesign of that. They're not finished yet. They were going to have a meeting this afternoon, and he will let me know when they will be complete with the drawings. And I asked him the question, does he think that the construction will happen this year? Because we're coming, to an end, and he said absolutely. They plan to have them constructed by the end of the year.
Okay.
So that's good news, and I'll keep you updated if I find it, if I hear any other news on that. Next, the handicap ramp removal at Lafayette and Lincoln Avenue. I spoke about this, I guess, at the last meeting. Just to recap really quickly, there's a curb ramp at Lafayette and Lincoln. It's very steep. We feel that with the physical restraints of the topography and there's no connection with the sidewalk, there's actually railroad track on across Lincoln and across Lafayette that would preclude extending the sidewalk, to make that connection with it. So I emailed PennDOT about it, and he said that the person I spoke with said that any location where the facilities are not being provided or a ramp is being removed, pedestrian study is required to determine the needs or lack thereof for pedestrians. In other words, if the borough can prove there are no pedestrians or so few it's not relevant, then you're not required to provide the facilities. However, the borough, I guess for its own protection, needs to perform or have performed a pedestrian study in accordance with the PennDOT specifications, Appendix E and Appendix J, our checklist, and then a pedestrian study. But, which, is easy enough to fill out with all the information we have about the curb ramp, except that it does not provide parameters. It
the pedestrian study and number of crossings, but it doesn't provide parameters of how to collect that data and what exact numbers they're looking for. So again, I emailed and questioned PennDOT about that, and what they said is that what he recommended, he agreed. He said there are no parameters right now as far as he could see either for conducting the study. But what he recommended is to conduct a pedestrian study during daylight hours and during a peak time, which I guess, now that fall's closing, it would be the morning time. Take account, and if in best engineering judgment it seems that the ramp is not being used and not necessary, then Borough Council can make a motion to have it removed, and then keep the motion and the findings and the study in the borough's file for protection. He did warn, though, that if someone, if someone handicapped is using the ramp, then it would be difficult to provide reason to remove it.
Okay. And having seen that ramp, probably anyone who would need a ramp would avoid that ramp, right?
It's very steep, yeah. It does not comply for many reasons with the PennDOT criteria.
So we would need a motion from council authorizing the engineer to complete the appropriate pedestrian study of the ramp at Lafayette and South Lincoln Avenue to support the removal of the ramp. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Do we want to put, like we traditionally do, a not to exceed number on that?
I was going to ask that myself. Okay. Could you just give us some sense of, we want to address this problem, but what are the costs involved in doing the study, and and generating the report, which we keep, as I understand it, and then we take the action here to remove the ramp, which is another question I have. But what's the, is there a not to exceed as Gerard just suggested, or some parameters on the dollar value of doing this to get us to that point?
Can we perhaps ask Mary Ellen to come back with that information?
That's
We're
fine.
going to meet next week. If you could send an email with that information, so you can figure out how many hours of data collection and all the rest of that, and give us a dollar figure that you think is probably reasonable to cover that.
Sure, I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
So shall we, do we need to table this motion to authorize her, since she's going to come back with a...
Was moved and seconded? Then, yeah, if it's been moved and seconded, then you need to table it if you're not going to act on it. Yeah.
Well, I was going to suggest just withdrawing it.
That's the other alternative.
Did I make the motion? I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, so it's been withdrawn and unseconded, right? Is that how this works? Okay.
We can take it off the table.
Okay, so if you could get information back to me within the week, Mary Ellen, so if we can put that on our, we can address that at our next meeting. And
Could I raise one other thing, since
Sure.
we're talking about this issue, and hopefully we'll take care of it soon? Could you also take a look at, I would suggest to council, some estimates on the ultimate result, which would be the elimination of the ramp, and if it's a squared off or a rounded design, in other words, just a straight curve, could we have some idea on cost of the end result as well?
Okay.
Actually, what it would actually look like, because it's kind of a odd height there. So I don't know what that would eventually look like. Is it going to be a steep drop off to the street?
Yeah, I know that's a hard thing. One thing we talked about is ending the sidewalk before the curb and then have a grassed slope, because it is very steep. I don't know how you could get sidewalk down to...
The only
comply
thing
with
I
it.
was thinking is wrapping it back around, because it's along the side of Lafayette, because it does gradually go down. But I don't know if they're going to just end it closer. It may make more sense to do that.
That and all.
For what it's worth, John, and in fact it's a good question involving the history, the folks who live along that stretch used to have, before the improvement of Lincoln, their own walkways to the street, and that was it. There was no pavement. So apparently what happened was, when Lincoln was widened, as part of those improvements, the sidewalk was put in the fashion we see it today. So elimination just takes it back pretty much to where it was, except there's a sidewalk joining the properties in the very front. So, you know, that seems to be certainly no worse, and in fact is a bit of a gain from where it was before the widening of the roadway.
Okay.
Okay. Next is the Frost Lane, the current Frost Lane project update. The township engineer reports that, barring any significant weather delays, the storm sewer should be completed later this week. The storm sewer construction was slowed down the last couple weeks by the weather, all the rain we got, and also rock encountered during the initial construction. To further complicate matters, they ran into a couple of conflicts with existing sanitary sewer, and a resolution of the conflict required a field revision and an additional drop inlet. Their survey crew has completed the stakeout for the curb on the north side of the road, and the curb crew is scheduled to mobilize as soon as the storm sewer is completed. So that's the update.
did that unfortunate encounter with the sanitary sewer and the rocks and so on result in an increased cost to the project?
I'm not sure about the sanitary sewer. I would say probably, I can find this, I can confirm this. I think that the rock did not increase the contract. I think the contract was written such that the rock encountered did not increase the cost, but I'll confirm that. Also, I think probably the drop inlet will end up being a change order, but I will confirm that as well.